Okay, look. I've been grappling for a few days with how to make this video, and at a certain point, I just need to make a decision and run with it before it becomes too late. Because there is not a lot of time between the unveiling of the nominees and the announcing of the winners. It took me longer than I'd like to admit to edit this video together, so my thoughts on every game are going to be short, because there's more I want to say about this year overall at the end of the video. I hope you stick around to hear it, so with that in mind, let's get started with the good. Before I start, I should mention that I haven't played this game. In fact, I've only played 2 of these games, and one of them was for a very short amount of time. So take all of my opinion with a grain of salt. With that said, I do think that Astrobot should win Game of the Year. Now hear me out! I don't think this is that shocking of an opinion. From what I've heard and seen about the game, it's a genre-defining platformer in every sense. All of the abilities at your disposal and the boss fights that all look like their final boss quality, not to mention that it really looks incredible, all the way down to the tiny little scratches on Astrobot's body. I'm personally not the biggest fan of console-exclusive games. It just feels so corporate, and it never serves to benefit the game, as it limits the audience it can acquire. So I think that may hurt this game slightly in the voting. The counter to that is that the audience vote really doesn't matter for the Game Awards. With 90% of the voting power in the hands of the games journalists, exclusivity becomes a bit of a moot point. But if there was ever a game that was able to use that exclusivity well, it's Astrobot. The game itself serves as a celebration of PlayStation and their gaming catalog. I mean, just look at all of the characters these bots dress up as from various iconic PlayStation games. The plot can basically be summed up as Astrobot teaming up with a PlayStation controller to collect all of his iconic gaming friends to rebuild the PlayStation 5 and head home. And that is by no means a knock on the story. I love it when games are able to have fun with their story and not take it all too seriously. I know that the Game of the Year award winner is rarely a family-friendly game. The only ones that come to mind are Overwatch and It Takes Two, but even Overwatch has over-the-top violence. But I wouldn't mind seeing that trend go away. Yet another game I haven't played. But I still wouldn't be surprised if this game won Game of the Year. From what I understand, it works like a Persona game, a tried and true system that has proven very successful in the wide gaming market. I've never played any Persona game either though. I know, I need to play them, but they're just so long. There are so many games I need to play and Persona games are on there, but I don't have the time to dedicate 100 hours to a single game. And yes, I may have done that with Baldur's Gate 3, but that's different, okay? Regardless, Metaphor ReFantazio is 65 hours on average if you just play the main story. And that's a long investment. I've heard that from some people too, it just takes too long to really get interesting. And if a game takes too long to get its hooks in you, people are gonna move on. But honestly, I think the most interesting aspect of the game is the very little bit that I do know about the plot, both from hearing it explained and reading the first few paragraphs on Wikipedia. So, as you can tell, I'm a bit of an expert. But extra spoiler warning here for obvious reasons. The rest of this discussion will be on the plot, so if you want to hear nothing, use the timestamps below to move on to the next game. Also, I'm not using any of the character names. I got confused by the sheer amount of names. In short, the plot kicks off when a general kills his king, this plan is found out, and an assassination plot is planned against the general. Meanwhile, that general is confronting the new successor to the throne and making their own claim. While doing so, they present the corpse of something called a human? I say something called a human because look at this thing! That's no human! I don't know what's going on with that, but frankly, I really want to. In presenting this, he proves the existence of humans and claims to be the only one capable of protecting everyone from them. After this, the spirit of the old king claims that in a month's time, either the successor or the general will take his place on the throne, whoever has the country's popular support. This spirit also stops anyone from killing either popular candidate. In a sense, this monarchy has been suddenly replaced with a democracy, and it's time for everyone to vote. And I don't know why, but I find this setting to be incredibly interesting. These are citizens in a medieval fantasy. As far as they're aware, the king is a man that their god or gods say everyone should give taxes to occasionally, and that's it. The idea that they have the right to decide who gets to be king is not only new, it's radical. And I'm so fascinated to see how this game plays with that concept that you really shouldn't be surprised if you see me playing this game on stream sometime soon. This game has that problem that a lot of people have with at least one game every year, and that's the fact that it's a remake. I, for one, don't have that problem. I love the Resident Evil remakes and feel like they completely changed the experience of playing the games. And from what I understand, this game does that as well. And yes, I say from what I understand because it's also a game I haven't played. But with that in mind, I do see a world where it wins Game of the Year. The gameplay is mixed, but overall positive. What I say when I mean it's mixed, it's that everything it takes from the original Final Fantasy VII is incredible. Improvements were made where necessary, and the little mini-games that pop up play well. I think there are even changes to the story. New characters added, and maybe something new going on with the cloaked figures to keep it all fresh. But then there's the open world section. And again, this is all stuff I've heard, not experienced. Apparently the open world kinda sucks. It's new, and that's great. For a remake especially, something new is always appreciated to keep it from feeling like the same game again. But it sounds like it's just all collectibles and repetitive puzzles with no sense of creativity to distinguish them. Maybe it's because it's the one aspect they had nothing to build off of. I'm not sure. Take all of the negatives with a grain of salt though, because I think this game is still solidly in the running. And the next game on our list here is Balatro, which is a game I haven't really...
Balatro! Alright, buckle up.
KG, what are you doing here? How did you get here?
The window.
Okay.
Who cares about that? I care about Balatro.
I'm gonna start picking up the glass. You can take over Balatro, okay?
Anyway, about Balatro. It is an indie game made by a singular dude, Local Thunk. Shout out to him. Making an entire video game from graphics to coding to soundtrack all on your own. Fantastic work by Local Thunk. Also, first game by Local Thunk. I heard about Balatro from a friend. I had never heard of it. She was completely obsessed with it. So I was like, yeah, sure, let's play Balatro. And that is how everybody learned about Balatro. It has spread entirely by word of mouth. There has been very little formal marketing about Balatro. So, you might ask, what is Balatro? It is something that has completely colonized my brain. You have not seen me, you have not heard of me since Pacific Drive. Go watch it. That was back in the summer. I have spent the last 6 months playing Balatro. I also spent a good chunk of Pacific Drive talking about Balatro.
You did talk about playing that game a lot while we were playing Pacific Drive, especially near the end.
Love Balatro.
That's how long you've been playing Balatro?
That is how long. I have logged more hours in Balatro than I've logged in Breath of the Wild. I've logged more hours in Balatro than I've logged in Hades. One of my all-time favorite games.
Oh my god.
So, what is Balatro? Why has it colonized so many people's brains? It is a poker roguelite. Okay? You're playing with poker hands. If you know the rules of poker, it's slightly easier, but you don't have to know the rules of poker. You start off with a deck of cards, you get to boost your cards, and the more you boost, the better hands you have, yada yada yada. Most games will give you 4, 5, maybe 15 boost abilities. Balatro gives you 250 boosting abilities.
That's so many.
Remember, you can hold 5 at a time, and you can boost to get 7, 8, 9 abilities at a time.
That's too many.
That's too many. You can do the math. Show it on the screen. I'm holding you to that now. You're welcome.
Ah, man. I could cut that out.
So, it's perfect for busy people like me because the game also only takes about 15 to 30 minutes to play. So you don't have to have 4 or 5 hours to sit down for a right and proper gaming session. You can pick up your Switch, your computer, and also available on the phone. So I play Balatro on my phone too. And just play wherever you're at. And I'm a busy person. You have not heard from me in 6 months. Partially because Balatro, partially because life. But it's a game that I still manage. I have time to play, even if it's just a few rounds. And another thing I like about it is all the little details. You know, there's difficulty levels. Every time you go up a difficulty level, the music raises by 1 key, and there's enough difficulty levels that once you go to the top, it's up an official 2 octaves. And in addition, all the pixel work, the screen's designed to look like it's being streamed through a really bad 80s TV, like complete with warping on the sides and the lines. And then...
Oh, man. I cut myself on glass.
Oh, personal problem.
You caused it!
Ah, tomatoes, tomatoes. Anyway, I'm off to go play Balatro. I've been talking for far too long. The poker, it calls to me.
Okay, before you go, do you think it should win Game of the Year at least? Or...
Absolutely.
Really? Over, like, Astrobot and Metaphor ReFantazio and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and the other two?
Now, I love rooting for the underdog. That's part of the reason why I'm rooting for it. That's also why I rooted for Hades back in 2022. However, the amount of love and care and affection that has been put in this game is unmatched. This isn't done by some AAA studio. This is done by one guy with a dream.
A true labor of love.
Yes, find me another game that has this much love, care, and compassion put into it.
Okay, well, it's 4th on my list, so...
Nah, your list is wrong.
Oh. Well, that's a good thing to say while I'm presenting my list.
Yeah. Anyway, get into KG's list. Balatro, and more Balatro.
Okay.
There are no other games this year besides Balatro.
Well, now that you've shared your list, I should probably go back to sharing mine, so if you want to go back to playing Balatro, you're
yes,
free to do so.
Bye!
Bye! So, we finally made it to the game I played in full. And I guess I should start with the positives. If you like the Souls games, you'll enjoy this game. It plays a lot like them, all the way down to the Estus flasks and campfires. The real difference there is that you don't have to worry about collecting your souls after you die. You keep everything on you when you're reborn. You also have several magic abilities and stances you can swap between, but from my perspective, you just find what you like and stick with it for the most part. The story is fun and well written, and completing each chapter gives you a beautifully animated music video explaining a relevant Chinese myth. Speaking of those myths, you could probably tell that this game is heavily based on Journey to the West, and if you're more familiar with that story than I am, you'll probably be more familiar with the NPCs and bosses that you run into throughout the game. And this game looks incredible. Like, genuinely, wow. I mentioned the music videos earlier, but the game itself is breathtaking. It's another game that really feels like it's part of the next generation of gaming. But with all that praise, what problems do I have? Well, it's really just one. And that's the fact that my experience was horrible. Oh, this is definitely it. This has to be it. Yep, look at him move. Now, this is somebody I don't think Immobilize is gonna work on. Yeah, I'm just gonna go be right back and see if I can just close this and reopen it or something, because it's taking way too long. See you guys in a bit. Wow, would you look at that? We made it. It only took like 20 minutes. Oh! That can't be good. That can't be good. That's probably for the best. Yeah, this could entirely be a me problem. Maybe it's just a sign that I need to get a better PC soon, but I haven't had any problems this bad in a game before. And because of all this, I had to have the graphics set to minimum, and wow, does that make the cloud especially look terrible. With how my streams went, I just can't in good conscience say this game deserves Game of the Year. The Elden Ring Shadow of the ErdTree DLC may be the greatest gaming experience in all of 2024. I haven't played the DLC, or Elden Ring as a whole to be honest, but I have not heard anyone say anything negative about this DLC. It and Astrobot are the only two things on this list that I can say nothing negative about. Well, at least in terms of how they are as gaming experiences. But Shadow of the ErdTree is a DLC and not a game. And for that reason, I do not think it should be in the Game of the Year category, even if it is the peak of gaming in 2024. It belongs in a different category. So, this is my final list. What I consider to be the most likely winner of Game of the Year. And what I think is important to mention is that there is usually some kind of correlation between Metacritic scores and Game of the Year winners. It's not always a sure thing, but it's important to note. Also, let's just put in my accuracy right here. Yep, 100% accuracy on predicting Game of the Year. Solid chance that drops down to 50 very soon. So, let's revel in the victory this time around. If that's all you wanted to stay for, thank you so much for making it this long. Let me know your thoughts down below. If you want to see a more in-depth discussion on each of these games, check out the Besties podcast. It's a source I used for a lot of this video. I just really enjoy the hosts, honestly, so it's also just entertaining for me. But now, it's time to move on to the final discussion. I don't think it'd be outrageous for me to say that 2024 was not a strong year for gaming. I mean, just look at the roster we have here for Game of the Year compared to last year's. Most games on last year's list would beat out every game on this year's list without a doubt. I guarantee that there's a game here none of you have heard of. If I wasn't actively spending the year trying to figure out what this final roster would be, I wouldn't have known half of them. We have a DLC on the list because this was such a light year. And I don't have a fix for it. The industry as a whole is just heading in a bad direction. 2024 was full of layoffs in the gaming industry for just about every major studio. That, plus the scarily strong rise of generative AI in all business ventures, makes me fear that games are going to lose that human element that makes them special. And that's not a gaming only thing. That's every creative field. From art to literature to film, AI will be a scourge against human creativity. But that's not what this discussion is about. Even without taking AI and massive firings into account, the gaming industry is just cannibalizing itself in order to get every last penny out of its users. From gacha mechanics to seasonal battle passes, developers don't want this, at least for the most part. Developers want to tell stories and create experiences that speak to an audience and give them a new perspective, like Metaphor ReFantazio. Or some of them just want to help people get through a tough day, like Balatro. But the higher-ups at these companies just want to fill their own pockets. Look at a game a lot of people wanted on this year's Game of the Year list. Helldivers 2. I'll admit, it's another game I haven't played, but even I know that it was a huge phenomenon in the gaming industry. But I also know that it had a spectacular collapse in the hands of Sony. For those who don't know, Sony put out a statement saying that all accounts for Helldivers 2 needed to be linked to a PlayStation account or they wouldn't be given access to the game. Now, thousands of players either didn't want to do that or were unable to do that because of the restrictions in the region they live in. That would mean these thousands of people would have their access to a game they paid for revoked. Sony ended up backtracking on that decision, but the damage was already done and the game couldn't recover. Or maybe we can talk about Concord. You know, the other Sony game that experienced a historic gaming collapse, a game that ceased to exist just 2 weeks after its launch, the game that also took 8 years to develop. A big part of the reason it didn't work is because the game just felt soulless. Everything from the gameplay to the character designs just felt empty. And this isn't me taking digs at the devs. I'm sure they all put in an incredible amount of effort. This is directed at the higher-ups, who sacrifice creativity for mass market appeal and a higher profit. I could go on with examples. The launch of Overwatch 2 in particular comes to mind, and I really wish I had an answer. The only thing I can say is to try and support indie devs. Both indie game categories are stacked this year. I think Balatro might sweep both of them, but I'd honestly suggest checking out the games on those lists before the Game of the Year list. Pacific Drive was a blast, and absolutely full of small lore bits and fun writing. Make your voices heard on these practices and what you don't like in the industry. But more than that, make your wallet heard. If you're upset about the price of a cosmetic or the constant microtransactions present in these games, don't buy them. The only reason the industry keeps using these practices is because it works. We have the power to change that. And that's really all I have to say on the matter. Sorry if I got rambly and repetitive at the end, I just needed to get some of that off my chest. If you agree with me or have any different opinions, let me know down in the comments below. I'd love to have a discussion about anything we talked about today, and let me know what games from this year you think I should check out. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe to see more. I hope you stick around, and with that, see you all next time. Bye!